I'm Ethan Mitchell, 34, an architect with a lakeside property I built from the ground up after my parents threw me out 12 years ago. So when my phone rang with an unknown number and I heard my mother's voice demanding I host my golden child brother Tyler's 150-person wedding at my home, I nearly dropped my coffee. The audacity was breathtaking. They hadn't spoken to me in over a decade, yet somehow felt entitled to my home for their perfect son's perfect day. Before I dive into how this all went down, let me know where you're watching from and hit that like button if you've ever had to deal with entitled family members. Trust me, the ending of this story might surprise you. To understand why my parents' request was so outrageous, you need to know our history. I grew up in Lake Forest, an affluent Chicago suburb where appearances meant everything. My father, Richard Mitchell, built a successful commercial real estate business through relentless work and cutthroat tactics. My mother, Margaret, dedicated her life to social climbing and maintaining the perfect family image. They had 2 sons, my older brother Tyler and me. From day one, the family dynamic was crystal clear. Tyler was the golden child, handsome, athletic, charismatic, with our father's business acumen and our mother's social grace. He was captain of the football team, prom king, and could charm anyone within minutes of meeting them. I was different. Introverted, artistic, more interested in building designs than building social connections. While I struggled with team sports, I excelled academically, particularly in math and physics, subjects that would later serve my architectural career. Every achievement in our house was measured on an uneven scale. When Tyler scored the winning touchdown, my parents threw a backyard celebration and invited half the neighborhood. When I won the state mathematics competition, my mother briefly mentioned it at dinner before asking Tyler about football practice. My father called my academic interests soft compared to the real-world skills Tyler was developing. Tyler is building relationships that will serve him in business, my father would say. Those math competitions aren't teaching you how to lead, Ethan. Our bedrooms told the whole story. Tyler's walls were covered with trophies, medals, and team photos. My father built him custom shelving just to display them all. My room had one small shelf for academic awards, which my mother referred to as Ethan's little hobby corner. Tyler wasn't deliberately cruel, but he absorbed our parents' attitudes. Sometimes he'd defend me, especially when we were alone, saying things like, "Dad's hard on you because he doesn't understand you." Other times, particularly when his friends were around, he'd join in the mockery. "Ethan's probably designing another building nobody will ever build." The defining conflict began my senior year of high school. I'd been accepted to several prestigious architecture programs, including Cornell and MIT. My father had different plans. "You'll be joining Mitchell Properties after college," he announced at dinner one night. "Tyler will take over sales and development, and you can handle the administrative side." "Dad, I'm going to study architecture," I replied. "I've already been accepted to Cornell." The explosion that followed still echoes in my memory. My father slammed his fist on the table, rattling the china plates my mother was so proud of. "Architecture? Drawing pretty pictures for a living? No son of mine is wasting his potential on some artistic fantasy." My mother tried her typical peacekeeping approach. "Richard, maybe he could do both? Study business and take some design courses?" But I held firm. Architecture wasn't a hobby or a phase, it was my passion, my future. The argument ended with my father's ultimatum. "If you want to waste your education on architecture, don't expect me to pay for it." I took out student loans and applied for every scholarship I could find. I was accepted to Cornell with partial financial aid, and my parents reluctantly agreed to cover the remaining costs, though not without constant reminders of their disapproval. College was both liberating and challenging. Away from my family's dynamics, I thrived academically and began building genuine friendships with people who appreciated me for who I was. But breaks and holidays meant returning to a home where I was constantly compared to Tyler, who was fulfilling the family legacy at Northwestern's business school. The final break came shortly after my 22nd birthday, during spring break of my senior year. I was one semester away from graduating with honors in architecture. That week, I made two decisions that would forever alter my relationship with my family. First, I turned down a job offer from a prestigious Chicago firm to accept a position with a smaller, innovative sustainable design studio in Seattle. Second, during a tense family dinner, I finally came out as gay. I'd known since high school but had kept it private, afraid of adding another reason for my parents to see me as different. That night, listening to my father talk about setting me up with a business associate's daughter, something in me finally broke. "Dad, that's not going to work," I said quietly. "I'm gay." The silence that followed was deafening. My mother's fork clattered against her plate. Tyler stared at his food. "No, you're not," my father finally said. "This is just another way to embarrass this family." What followed was a biblical scale eruption. My parents' conservative religious views, which had never been particularly evident before, suddenly became the centerpiece of their identity. My mother cried about grandchildren and church gossip. My father quoted scripture he'd likely never read before that day. Tyler sat in silence, occasionally making eye contact but saying nothing. When the shouting finally subsided, my father delivered his verdict. "You have two choices. You can get help for this problem and join the family business as planned, or you can leave this house and never come back." I stood up, walked upstairs, and packed a suitcase. My mother followed, crying and begging me to make the right choice. My father called the family lawyer to remove me from all family accounts and insurance policies. Tyler came to my room last, hovering in the doorway. "You could just tell them you'll think about therapy," he suggested. "By some time." "Would you?" I asked him. He looked away. "I'm not in your situation." "No, you're not," I agreed. "And you never stood up for me. Not once when it really mattered." I walked out with one suitcase, my laptop, and no plan beyond calling a friend from college whose couch I could crash on. The next day, I learned my tuition payment for my final semester had been cancelled. My parents had thrown me out penniless, one semester shy of my degree, with student loans and no family support. The first few months were brutal. I couch-surfed between 3 different friends' apartments, working evenings as a bartender and weekends at a coffee shop while trying to figure out how to finish my degree. I applied for emergency financial aid, but the process was slow, and the semester was rapidly approaching. My saving grace came in the form of Professor Bradford Thompson, my design studio instructor who had always believed in my talent. When I explained my situation during office hours, trying to keep my voice steady despite the humiliation and fear, he listened without judgment. "Ethan," he said when I finished, "your work has always been exceptional. I'm not letting your degree get derailed by this." He helped me secure a departmental scholarship and an internship with a local architecture firm that paid just enough to cover a shared apartment with 2 other students. Those months taught me who I truly was without the shadow of my family's expectations. I worked harder than I ever had, sleeping 4 hours a night, pouring my pain and determination into my final projects. I graduated with highest honors, my thesis project winning a regional design award that opened doors despite my lack of family connections. The grief and betrayal didn't disappear overnight. There were nights I'd wake up in a cold sweat, replaying my father's words, wondering what fundamental flaw in me made me unworthy of my parents' acceptance. I started seeing a campus therapist who helped me understand I wasn't responsible for their inability to love me unconditionally. After graduation, I moved to Seattle for the job I'd accepted. The pay was modest, but the firm was doing innovative work in sustainable design. I rented a tiny studio apartment and lived on ramen and determination. Each project I contributed to built my portfolio and confidence. During my second year in Seattle, I met Mason Taylor at a mutual friend's gallery opening. He was working as an environmental engineer, passionate about water conservation systems that complemented my interest in sustainable architecture. Our conversation about rainwater reclamation systems somehow turned into dinner, then weekend hikes, then moving in together a year later. Mason's family became my first experience with what unconditional love could look like. His parents welcomed me without reservation, including me in holiday gatherings and never once making me feel like an outsider. His mother, Linda, would call just to check in, something my own mother had never done even before the estrangement. "Family is who shows up," Linda told me once. "Not just who shares your DNA." My career progressed steadily. At 27, I was made project lead on a community center that won several green building awards. By 29, I was courted by a larger firm in Madison, Wisconsin, where Mason was also offered an opportunity with a water conservation initiative. We decided to make the move together, and that same year, Mason proposed during a camping trip to Olympic National Park. We married in a small ceremony by Lake Mendota, surrounded by friends and Mason's family. I sent invitations to my parents and Tyler, knowing they wouldn't come but needing to make the gesture for myself. The invitations were returned unopened. At 31, after saving aggressively and establishing myself in my field, I found a property for sale on a smaller lake outside Madison, 5 acres with an old cabin that had seen better days but sat on a perfect piece of waterfront land. The moment I saw it, I could envision the home I wanted to build there, modern but warm, with sustainable features integrated throughout, large windows capturing the lake views and natural light. Mason and I purchased the land, and I spent every spare moment designing our home. I called in favors from industry contacts, traded design services for contracting work, and did much of the finishing work myself. Over 18 months, we transformed the property into a stunning modern home featured in several architectural publications. The house became my living portfolio, bringing in clients wanting similar sustainable luxury designs. With this success, I launched my own small architecture firm specializing in environmentally conscious residential and small commercial projects. My team grew to 7 people, and we developed a reputation for innovative, beautiful work that respected the natural environment. Throughout these years, I occasionally received updates about my family through distant relatives or mutual acquaintances who didn't know the full story of our estrangement. Tyler had joined my father's business as planned and was being groomed to take over. He had dated a series of women my mother deemed appropriate, eventually settling on Jessica, the daughter of one of my father's business associates. My parents had expanded their home and purchased a vacation property in Florida. Standard upper-middle-class success story. Not once did Tyler reach out independently. According to a cousin who didn't realize how complete our estrangement was, Tyler had expressed regret about how things ended but felt caught between loyalty to our parents and reconnecting with me. He chose the path of least resistance, as he always had. I had created a life I was proud of, surrounded by people who valued me for exactly who I was. The pain of my family's rejection had transformed from an open wound to a dull ache, present but no longer debilitating. I had stopped checking my phone for calls that wouldn't come and had released the fantasy that they would someday apologize and welcome me back. Which is why, after 12 years of silence, my mother's voice on the phone that Sunday morning was so disorienting. It was a peaceful Sunday morning in early June. Mason and I were enjoying coffee on our deck overlooking the lake, discussing plans for a small garden expansion, when my phone rang with an unknown Illinois number. Normally I'd let unknown calls go to voicemail, but I was waiting to hear from a potential client in Chicago. "Hello, this is Ethan," I answered. "Ethan? It's your mother." The coffee mug froze halfway to my lips. 12 years of silence, and now her voice was in my ear as if we'd spoken yesterday. My heart hammered against my ribs. "Mom?" I managed to say, shooting Mason a confused look. He immediately straightened, concern crossing his face. "Yes, it's me," she said, her voice carrying that familiar crisp, controlled tone I remembered from childhood discussions about proper dinner etiquette or appropriate clothing for church. "I hope you're doing well." No apology. No acknowledgment of 12 years of silence. Just polite small talk as if we were distant acquaintances who'd lost touch through busy schedules rather than family members severed by rejection. "I'm fine," I replied, still struggling to process the surreal nature of this conversation. "Why are you calling?" Well, I have wonderful news, she continued, her voice brightening artificially. Tyler is getting married to Jessica in August. It's going to be a beautiful event. My mind raced. Was this an olive branch? A wedding invitation after all these years? That's nice, I said cautiously. Congratulations to them. Yes, we're all very excited. The thing is, she paused, and I could hear the practiced nature of what came next. They were supposed to have the ceremony at the Lakeside Country Club, but there's been a terrible mix-up with the booking. The wedding is in 6 weeks, and we have nowhere to hold it. I waited, sensing where this was heading but not quite believing it. Your cousin Melissa mentioned you have a lovely home on a lake now. She showed me an article about it in that architecture magazine. My mother's voice took on the wheedling tone she used when trying to convince someone to do something they clearly didn't want to do. We were thinking it would be the perfect location for Tyler's wedding. I nearly laughed out loud at the absurdity. You want to have Tyler's wedding at my house? It would be so perfect, Ethan. The ceremony on the lawn overlooking the lake, reception on that beautiful deck the magazine showed. We're expecting about 150 guests. 150 guests. People who knew my parents, who had watched them erase me from the family, now expected to be hosted on my property. Mom, I haven't spoken to you or Dad in 12 years. You threw me out. You cut me off financially. You returned my wedding invitation unopened. And now you want to use my home for Tyler's wedding? A brief silence followed before my mother spoke again, her voice taking on that familiar disappointed tone. I was hoping we could put the past behind us. This is what family does, Ethan. They help each other in times of need. Before I could respond, I heard movement on the other end of the line, followed by my father's gruff voice. Ethan, it's your father. Look, I know things ended badly between us, but this is your brother's wedding. It's important. Your mother says your place would be perfect, and Tyler and Jessica are counting on it. No apology from him either. Just the expectation of compliance, as always. Dad, this is... I can't even believe we're having this conversation. You disowned me. You called me an embarrassment to the family. That was a long time ago, he said dismissively. People say things in the heat of the moment. The point is, your brother needs this. The deposit at the country club is non-refundable, and we're in a bind. You have the space. It's the right thing to do. The familiar pressure to conform to his will, to prioritize everyone else's needs above my own, pressed down on me. For a moment, I felt like that 22-year-old again, being told who I was allowed to be. I need to think about this, I said finally, not ready to engage in a full confrontation but unwilling to agree to their outrageous request. I'll call you back. Don't take too long. My father replied. We need to send out updated information to the guests. After ending the call, I sat in stunned silence. Mason, who had heard my side of the conversation, moved his chair closer and took my hand. Was that really your parents? He asked gently. I nodded, still processing. They want to have Tyler's wedding here. 150 people. 6 weeks from now. Like nothing ever happened between us. Mason's expression darkened. I don't even have words for what that is. We spent the rest of the morning discussing the situation. Mason, always my steadfast supporter, made it clear he would back whatever decision I made but also expressed concern about the emotional toll of having my estranged family take over our home. They haven't changed, I realized as we talked. This isn't about reconciliation. They just need something from me. What are you thinking? Mason asked. Part of me wants to say yes just to prove I'm not the villain they've made me out to be, I admitted. But another part knows this would be letting them use me all over again. As the day progressed, my phone buzzed with a text from Tyler, the first direct communication from him in 12 years. Hey bro, heard Mom and Dad talk to you about the wedding. Would mean a lot. Hope you're doing well. No acknowledgement of his silence. No questions about my life. Just the expectation that I would roll over and comply, as he had always done with our parents. After careful consideration and a long talk with my therapist Dr. Harris during an emergency phone session, I made my decision. I would not host the wedding. I deserved better than to be ignored for 12 years and then treated like a convenient venue. With resolve strengthening my voice, I called my parents back the next day. I prepared for the call like I would for a difficult client meeting, jotting down key points to ensure I wouldn't be thrown off by emotional manipulation. Mason sat nearby, a silent support as I dialed my parents' number. My mother answered on the second ring. "Ethan? Have you made your decision?" "Yes, I have," I replied, keeping my voice calm and measured. "I'm sorry, but I won't be able to host Tyler's wedding at my home." The sharp intake of breath was audible. "What do you mean? This is your brother's wedding." "I understand that, but hosting 150 strangers at my private home isn't something I'm comfortable with, especially given our history." "I'll get your father," she said, her voice tight. My father's voice boomed through the speaker. "Ethan, what's this nonsense? Your mother says you're refusing to help your brother." "Dad, I've thought about this carefully. I haven't seen or spoken to any of you in 12 years. You disowned me. You cut me off financially. You've made no attempts at reconciliation. I can't simply pretend none of that happened because you need my house. This isn't about you," he exploded, exactly as I'd expected. "This is about your brother's special day. Are you really so selfish that you'd ruin his wedding over old grievances?" The familiar accusation of selfishness, the same one used whenever I didn't conform to his expectations. This time, it didn't land. "I'm not ruining anything," I replied evenly. "I'm simply declining to offer my private home as a venue. There are plenty of other options: hotels, event spaces, parks with pavilions. Those are all booked. Do you think we didn't try those first before humbling ourselves to ask you?" Humbling themselves. As if asking me for help was some great concession on their part. "I'm sorry, but my answer is no. I hope Tyler and Jessica find a venue that works for them, and I wish them happiness in their marriage." My mother came back on the line, her voice trembling with what I recognized as manipulative tears. "Ethan, how can you do this to us? After everything we've done for you?" The absurdity of this statement almost made me laugh. "What exactly have you done for me in the past 12 years, Mom? Because from where I'm standing, you threw me out, cut me off financially one semester before graduation, and returned my wedding invitation marked return to sender. That's all in the past," she insisted. "Families forgive each other. Forgiveness requires acknowledgment and apology," I replied. "Neither of which has happened here. Again, I'm sorry, but I won't be hosting the wedding." I ended the call as my father began another tirade, my hand shaking slightly but my resolve intact. The campaign began almost immediately. Within an hour, Tyler called. "Ethan, what the hell, man?" he started, his voice a mixture of anger and what sounded like genuine confusion. "Mom's crying, Dad's furious, and Jessica's freaking out about having nowhere for the wedding. Hello to you too, Tyler. 12 years of silence, and this is how you choose to reconnect?" He sighed. "Look, I know things have been complicated. But this is my wedding we're talking about. Can't you put aside the past for one day?" "This isn't about putting aside the past," I explained. "It's about boundaries. Mom and Dad didn't call to reconcile or apologize. They called because they want to use my home. It's just a house, Ethan. After everything they've done for you, you can't do this one thing?" There it was again, that bizarre revision of history. "What exactly do you think they've done for me, Tyler?" "They threw me out. They cut me off financially. I had to scramble to finish my degree. I haven't heard from any of you in 12 years. They put you through college. Until the final semester, when they canceled my tuition payment and left me scrambling." A pause. "I didn't know that part. There's a lot you don't know, Tyler. And frankly, this isn't how healthy family reconciliations begin, with demands and guilt trips." After Tyler's call came Jessica's texts, a barrage of messages from a woman I'd never met about how I was. ruining her perfect day, and how she'd always wanted a lakeside wedding. Then came the extended family. Aunts, uncles, cousins I barely remembered, all calling or texting with variations of, "Family should help family," and, "Can't you put the past behind you?" My mother took to social media, posting vague but pointed comments about the pain of ungrateful children, and praying for those who turn their backs on family. Distant relatives and family friends commented with sympathetic words, unaware of the full story. Through it all, Mason was my rock, reminding me that I wasn't wrong to establish boundaries, that real family doesn't ignore you for years and then make demands without apology. After a week of harassment, the calls and texts finally slowed. I thought perhaps they had accepted my decision and found an alternative venue. I was wrong. The following Tuesday, I received a call from a catering company confirming delivery details for the Mitchell wedding at my address on August 14th. Confused, I explained there must be a mistake, that no wedding was taking place at my home. "That's odd," the woman said. "We have a signed contract from Margaret Mitchell for delivery to this address. She confirmed just yesterday." After ending the call, I checked Tyler's fiancée Jessica's social media accounts. There it was, a countdown post to our dream lakeside wedding, with a photo of my house, clearly taken from the Architecture magazine feature, with the date August 14th. They were still planning to have the wedding at my house, despite my explicit refusal. Further investigation revealed my mother had been contacting various vendors, florists, rental companies, photographers, all with my address as the venue. She had even created a wedding website with detailed directions to my home. The realization hit me like a physical blow. They were planning to simply show up with the entire wedding party, vendors, and guests, assuming I wouldn't turn them away once they arrived. The audacity was stunning. But they had severely underestimated how much I had changed in 12 years. The people who raised me, who trained me to acquiesce, to prioritize family image above all else, no longer had power over me. And they had no idea what was coming. "They're seriously planning to just show up?" Mason asked incredulously after I showed him Jessica's social media posts and the wedding website. "With 150 people? Without your permission? Apparently they think I won't have the heart to turn away a bride in a white dress and all her guests," I replied, still processing the sheer audacity of their plan. "What do you want to do?" Mason's face was serious, supportive. I took a deep breath. "I need to stop this before it starts." The next day, I called our friend Stephanie Rivera, an attorney who specialized in real estate law. Over lunch at her office, I explained the bizarre situation. "So let me get this straight," she said, setting down her sandwich. "Your estranged family, who you haven't spoken to in 12 years, is planning to host a 150-person wedding on your property against your explicit refusal?" "That's exactly it." She shook her head in disbelief. "Well, legally this is straightforward. It's trespassing. They have no right to be on your property without permission. Stephanie helped me draft a formal cease and desist letter, which I sent via certified mail to my parents, Tyler and Jessica. The letter clearly stated that none of them had permission to use my property for any event, that any attempt to do so would constitute trespassing, and that I would involve law enforcement if necessary. While waiting for the letters to be delivered, Mason and I developed a comprehensive plan. First, we changed the security code on our gated driveway. Next, I contacted a local security company and hired a guard to be present on the date of the planned wedding. I called every vendor listed on the wedding website, explaining that there had been a misunderstanding, that no event was taking place at my address, and that they should contact the Mitchells immediately for clarification. I installed additional security cameras covering the property entrance and the lakefront, in case they attempted to arrive by boat. We made plans to be away for the weekend of the supposed wedding, deciding to visit Mason's parents in Minnesota. I didn't want to be present for any potential confrontation. But then came another twist. 3 days after sending the cease and desist letters, I received a call from the catering company again. "Mr. Mitchell, we're just confirming the change of date for the event at your property. Mrs. Mitchell has moved it from August 14th to August 7th. They had changed the date, presumably after receiving my letter, thinking they could outsmart me by arriving when I wasn't expecting them. This changed everything. Running away no longer felt like the right approach. After discussing it with Mason and another emergency session with Dr. Harris, I made a decision. We would stay and face this head on. "Are you sure?" Mason asked. "It's going to be stressful." "I'm sure," I replied. "I've spent too many years running from confrontation with them. I need to stand my ground." We revised our plan. The security guard was rescheduled for August 7th. I contacted our closest friends, explaining the situation and asking if they'd be willing to be present as witnesses and support. 6 friends immediately agreed, including my business partner Nathaniel and his husband Derek, who lived nearby. I printed large, clear, "Private property, no trespassing" signs and installed them at the entrance to our drive. The day before the wedding, I did one final check of our preparations. Security cameras were functioning, recording to cloud storage. The security guard, Graham Wilson, was confirmed for 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. coverage. Our friends would arrive by 9 a.m. The new gate code was active. That night, Mason and I sat on our deck watching the sunset over the lake, trying to find some calm before the storm. "Whatever happens tomorrow," Mason said, taking my hand, "remember that you've done everything right. You set a boundary. You communicated it clearly. You've been more than reasonable." I nodded, squeezing his hand. "I know. I just can't believe it's come to this. They're the ones who created this situation, not you." We went to bed early, though sleep was elusive. As I stared at the ceiling, I found myself thinking about the day my parents threw me out, how terrified and alone I'd felt. Tomorrow would be different. Tomorrow, I wouldn't be alone, and I wouldn't be afraid. I was no longer the young man desperate for their approval. I was Ethan Mitchell, successful architect, loving husband, and owner of this beautiful home that I had built with my own talent and determination. And no one, not even the people who raised me, had the right to take that from me. I woke before dawn on August 7th, the knot in my stomach tightening as I thought about the day ahead. Mason and I ate a quiet breakfast, checking the security cameras periodically. Our friends arrived as planned, bringing food and moral support, positioning themselves discreetly around the property. Security guard Graham Wilson arrived at 9:45 a.m., a former police officer with a calm demeanor who stationed himself at the gate after I briefed him on the situation. "So your family is trying to hold a wedding here without permission?" he asked, eyebrows raised. "Exactly. They might try to say I approved it or that there's been a misunderstanding. I haven't, and there hasn't." He nodded. "Don't worry, Mr. Mitchell. No one's getting past this gate without your say-so." At precisely 11:22 a.m., the first car appeared on our long driveway, stopping at the closed gate. The security camera showed my parents' black Mercedes, my father at the wheel, my mother in the passenger seat. My stomach lurched, but I took a deep breath and pressed the intercom button. "Can I help you?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. My father's face appeared annoyed as he rolled down his window. "Ethan? The gate's closed. Open it up, we need to start setting up." "Setting up for what, Dad? I've made it clear multiple times that you don't have permission to hold an event on my property." My mother leaned across my father, her face coming into view. "Ethan, stop this nonsense immediately. The guests will be arriving in less than 3 hours. I've sent multiple communications making it clear no event is taking place here today. You need to contact your guests and vendors immediately and direct them to another location." "You can't be serious," my father sputtered. "Your brother's entire wedding party is on their way. That's unfortunate, but it doesn't change the fact that you don't have permission to be here. This is private property." My mother's face crumpled into tears. "How can you be so cruel? This is your family. Family respects boundaries," I replied firmly. "Please leave now." I stepped away from the intercom as my father began shouting. Mason put his arm around my shoulders. You're doing great, he whispered. Within 15 minutes, 3 more cars arrived, the wedding planner and her assistants, according to the magnetic signs on their vehicles. The planner, a stylish woman in her 40s, approached the gate and spoke with Graham before approaching the intercom. Mr. Mitchell? I'm Amanda Winters, the wedding coordinator. There seems to be some confusion. We have a contract for a wedding at this address today. Ms. Winters, I'm sorry you've been put in this position, but there is no confusion. My family does not have permission to hold an event here. They were explicitly told this multiple times. She frowned, glancing back at my parents' car. I see. Mrs. Mitchell assured me everything was arranged with you. She lied, I said simply. Again, I'm sorry you've been misled, but there will be no wedding here today. By noon, the situation at the gate had escalated. Several cars containing groomsmen and bridesmaids had arrived. The catering van was turned away. Florists with arrangements were directed elsewhere. My parents remained at the gate, my father periodically approaching the intercom to demand entry, vacillating between threats and attempts at manipulation. I'll sue you for breach of contract. Your mother is in tears. Is this what you want? After everything we've sacrificed for you. Each time, Graham calmly but firmly reminded him that he was on private property and needed to leave. At 12:45 p.m., Tyler and Jessica arrived in a sleek black town car. Jessica, already in her wedding dress, burst into tears upon seeing the closed gate and cluster of confused vendors and guests. Tyler approached the intercom, his expression a mixture of anger and desperation. Ethan? It's Tyler. Can we talk? Just you and me? I hesitated, then nodded to Graham to allow only Tyler through the pedestrian gate. Mason squeezed my arm in support as I walked down to meet my brother for the first time in 12 years. He looked older, of course. More lines around his eyes, a slight softening of his jawline. Still handsome in that conventional way that had always made him our parents' perfect son. He wore an expensive tuxedo, his tie slightly askew, the only indication of his distress. What the hell, Ethan? He said as I approached. You're really going to do this? Jessica is in tears. Her parents are on their way with half of Springfield. We have nowhere else to go. I made it very clear to Mom, Dad, you, and Jessica that this property was not available. I replied. I sent formal letters. I called vendors. What did you expect would happen? I expected you to be a decent human being, he exclaimed. This is my wedding day. And that's supposed to erase 12 years of silence? You never once reached out to me, Tyler. Not once. Not when I was struggling to finish college after Mom and Dad cut me off. Not when I started my business. Not when I got married. He had the decency to look slightly ashamed. I was caught in the middle. No, you chose a side. You always chose their side because it was easier. So this is revenge? Ruining my wedding to get back at me? I shook my head. This isn't revenge. This is a boundary. You can't ignore someone for 12 years and then expect to use their home for your wedding. That's not how relationships work. Tyler ran a hand through his carefully styled hair. Mom said you'd agreed to it. She said you were excited to reconnect. For the first time, I saw genuine confusion in his eyes. She told you I'd agreed to host the wedding? Yes. Why else would we plan it here? I laughed, though there was no humor in it. Because she assumed I wouldn't have the spine to say no once you all showed up. She gambled and lost. Tyler stared at me, the reality of the situation slowly dawning on him. She lied to me? Yes, Tyler. She lied. I never agreed to host your wedding. In fact, I explicitly refused multiple times. He sat heavily on a decorative boulder near the gate, looking suddenly deflated. I didn't know. For a moment, I felt a flicker of sympathy for him. He was still caught in our parents' web of manipulation, still the golden child who never questioned their version of events. Tyler, I'm sorry your wedding day is being affected by this. Truly. But this situation is the direct result of Mom and Dad's actions, not mine. He looked up at me, really seeing me perhaps for the first time in years. "You've done well for yourself. This place is incredible." "Thank you. I designed it myself." A small, genuine smile. "Of course you did. You were always the talented one." The moment of connection was broken by Jessica's shrill voice calling from beyond the gate. "Tyler! What's happening? The photographer is here and has nowhere to set up." Tyler stood, straightening his jacket. "I need to deal with this mess. You should tell your guests to head to a hotel. Most have event spaces that might be available last minute." He nodded. "That's probably the best option at this point." He hesitated, then added, "For what it's worth, I am sorry. For not reaching out. For believing Mom's version without checking with you." It wasn't a complete apology, but it was something. "I appreciate that." As Tyler walked back toward the gate, my father stormed up to the intercom again. "Ethan Mitchell! Open this gate immediately or I'll call the police." Graham, still calm as ever, stepped forward. "Sir, I'm a former police officer, and I can assure you that calling the current police will only result in you being removed from the property. Mr. Mitchell has made it clear no event is taking place here, and you are now trespassing." My father's face reddened. "This is my son's wedding." "Not on this property it isn't," Graham replied. What followed was both sad and vindicating. My father attempted to tailgate another vehicle through the gate, only to be blocked by Graham. My mother sobbed dramatically for the benefit of arriving guests. Jessica had a full bridezilla meltdown captured on our security cameras, throwing her bouquet to the ground and screaming about her ruined special day. Through it all, I remained firm but calm, directing all communications through Graham and occasionally speaking directly to confused vendors who had been misled. By 3 p.m., the crowd at the gate had largely dispersed, heading to the Grand Hotel downtown where Tyler had apparently secured emergency event space. My parents were the last to leave, my mother's tear-streaked face pressing against the car window as my father drove away, his expression thunderous. As the dust settled, I felt an odd mixture of emotions, sadness for the broken family relationships, but also a profound sense of peace. For perhaps the first time in my life, I had stood my ground against my parents' manipulation and won. Mason approached, wrapping his arms around me from behind as we watched the last car disappear down the road. "You okay?" he asked softly. I leaned back against his chest, exhaling slowly. "Yeah. I think I actually am." The day after the wedding chaos, Mason and I sat on our deck drinking coffee, processing the events with our friends who had stayed overnight. There was a strange sense of calm after the storm, as if a long festering wound had finally been lanced. "I still can't believe they just expected to show up with 150 people," my friend Nathaniel said, shaking his head. "The entitlement is staggering." "That's how they've always been," I replied. "Rules don't apply to the Mitchell family, except the rules they create for everyone else." Around noon, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Ethan, it's Tyler. Got your number from cousin Melissa. Can we talk? Just us. No parents. Maybe coffee somewhere? I owe you an apology." I showed the message to Mason, who raised his eyebrows. "Are you going to meet him?" I considered it carefully. "I think I will. Not for them, for me. I need closure." 3 days later, I sat at a small cafe in Madison, watching Tyler approach in business casual attire, a far cry from the disheveled groom I'd last seen. He spotted me and walked over, his expression a mixture of embarrassment and determination. "Thanks for meeting me," he said, sitting down across from me. "I was surprised by your text," I admitted. He ordered coffee before speaking again. "I wanted to apologize properly. What happened with the wedding, it was wrong. All of it. Mom and Dad told me you'd agreed to host but were being difficult about details. I believed them without question because it was easier than considering they might be lying. That's been the pattern our whole lives," I observed. "They say something, you believe it, I get painted as the difficult one." He nodded, looking down at his coffee. I've been thinking about that a lot since Saturday. About how I was always positioned as the good son, and you were always positioned as the problem. The golden child and the scapegoat. Classic family dynamics. I never stood up for you, he continued. Not when we were kids, not when they threw you out, not once in 12 years. I just accepted their version of events because challenging it would have meant challenging my place in the family too. It was perhaps the most honest conversation we'd ever had. Do you know what happened after they threw me out? I asked. They canceled my final tuition payment. I was one semester from graduating, and suddenly I had no money, no place to live, and no family support. Tyler's eyes widened. I didn't know that. Mom said they paid for your whole education. That's what they told you because it fit their narrative of being generous parents with an ungrateful son. I'm starting to see how much of what I believe about our family isn't true, he said quietly. We talked for nearly 2 hours, filling in the gaps of our separate lives. Tyler had followed the prescribed path, joining our father's business, marrying a socially acceptable woman, living in the right neighborhood. But beneath the perfect exterior, I sensed a profound dissatisfaction. Are you happy, Tyler? I asked directly. He considered the question, perhaps for the first time. I don't know. I'm successful by their standards. But since Saturday, watching you stand your ground, seeing the life you've built on your own terms, I've been questioning everything. As we prepared to leave, Tyler asked hesitantly, what happens now? Between us? That depends, I replied honestly. I'm open to rebuilding a relationship, but it has to be on new terms. No manipulation, no lies, no using me for my property or connections. And Mom and Dad? That's more complicated. I need a genuine acknowledgement of what happened and a real apology, at minimum. Not holding my breath for either. Tyler nodded. The wedding happened at the hotel. It was actually nice, more intimate, less ostentatious than what Mom had planned at your place. I'm glad it worked out. Jessica is still pretty upset with you, he admitted. I've never met Jessica, I reminded him. She has no relationship with me to be upset about. He chuckled. Fair point. We parted with an awkward but genuine hug, agreeing to meet again in a few weeks. True to form, my parents attempted various approaches to re-establish contact without acknowledging their behavior. First came angry voicemails from my father, threatening legal action for wedding contract violations. That didn't exist. Then came guilt-trip texts from my mother about her broken heart, and how families should forgive. When these failed, they attempted a different approach, a carefully worded email suggesting they might be open to putting the past behind us. If I was willing to be reasonable. Still no acknowledgement of what they'd done, still no genuine apology. I responded with a simple, boundary-setting email. I'm open to rebuilding our relationship, but that would require acknowledgement of past actions and a genuine apology. Until then, I request that you respect my boundaries and privacy. They didn't reply. Meanwhile, Tyler and I continued meeting occasionally. Our relationship was tentative, rebuilding from the ground up. He declined my invitation to dinner at our home with Mason, not yet ready to confront that aspect of my life, but it was a start. More surprisingly, Tyler began establishing small boundaries with our parents. He refused to participate in their revisionist discussions about me. He questioned their account of past events. Small steps, but significant for someone who had spent his life conforming to their expectations. Dad went ballistic when I suggested they owed you an apology. He told me during one of our coffees. Mom cried for 2 days when I declined their invitation to the club because I was meeting you instead. They're not used to hearing no, I observed. I never realized how controlling they are until I started pushing back, he admitted. Over the following year, my life continued its positive trajectory. My architecture firm secured a major commission for an eco-friendly community center. Mason and I celebrated our anniversary with a trip to Japan to study traditional architecture. Our home remained our sanctuary, free from family drama. Tyler's wedding photos occasionally appeared on my social media feed, him and Jessica looking appropriately happy at the hotel venue, our parents beaming beside them. I felt a complex mixture of emotions seeing them, a twinge of the old pain, but also relief at having maintained my boundaries. The most significant development came 13 months after the wedding debacle. Tyler called, his voice unusually excited. "Jessica's pregnant. We're having a baby in spring." "That's wonderful," I said, genuinely happy for him. "Congratulations. I want my child to know their uncle," he said after a pause. "Both their uncles. You and Mason." It was the first time he had acknowledged Mason as family. I'd like that very much. I'm not telling Mom and Dad yet, but I'm working with a therapist to figure out how to set boundaries with them around the baby. I don't want my child growing up in the same dynamic we did. It was perhaps the most healing moment of our adult relationship, the acknowledgement that our childhood had been damaged by our parents' dynamics, and his determination to break the cycle. As for my parents, they eventually settled into a distant, occasional presence in my life, sending Christmas cards, making brief, surface-level phone calls on birthdays. They never delivered the genuine apology I'd requested, and I maintained my boundaries accordingly. Some relationships can be rebuilt. Others can only be managed from a safe distance. The golden child/scapegoat dynamic that defined our childhood has faded as Tyler and I have established our adult identities and relationship apart from our parents' influence. We'll never be the close brothers we might have been without those lost years, but we've found a new, more honest connection. Looking back on that tumultuous wedding day, I recognize it as a pivotal moment in my journey, the day I finally stood firmly in my own power and refused to be manipulated or used by the people who should have loved me unconditionally but couldn't accept me as I am. My home remains my sanctuary, shared only with those who respect and value me. The lakeside property that my parents tried to commandeer for their perfect family image has become something far more meaningful, a symbol of the life I built after they threw me away, and the strength I found in standing up for myself. If you're watching this and struggling with toxic family dynamics or difficult boundaries, remember that you deserve respect. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do, for yourself and others, is to stand firm in your truth, even when it's uncomfortable. What about you? Have you ever had to establish difficult boundaries with family members? Did it lead to healing or further distance? Share your experiences in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life stories about family dynamics, boundaries, and personal growth. Remember, the family we choose can be just as meaningful as the family we're born into. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.